What now?
Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, and whoever has my voodoo doll, give it back. We're here with my Prelude, not the Prelude that I bought as a parts car, the Prelude that was supposed to receive the parts from the parts car that I thought I was buying. Why? Well, because it started making a horrible noise. I was chasing down parts for all of my 8 other cars, and the fan stopped working, and the exhaust valve started making horrible tapping noises. How long have those horrible tapping noises been going on for? I actually don't know. Probably because my damn fans are so loud that I can't hear anything over the fans. So with the fans going out, the fuses did their job. Thankfully, I did not overfuse it like I did last time and melt the fuse box. But the wires that I used did kind of melt. And the connector that I used definitely melted. So that's something that we got to work on. The fans are actually not my biggest concern right now. I got to get these valves adjusted. So we're just going to dig right into it because I want to show you where I went wrong and where I was kind of lucky and where I was betrayed by my tools. Sometimes that happens, and we're going to get right into it. Let's go. You might be able to tell I'm a little bit fired up right now because none of this was supposed to happen. This was supposed to be my most reliable car by far. So let's start with the fans. The fans, these wires are a thicker gauge than the ones that feed them power. So that's why I think these overloaded. Also, they fell down here. They fell down here where it gets a little bit hotter and where you would think that the fan blowing on it would help, but it really did it no favors. So I got to clip off this connector. You see this connector is like, this is melted together. It's discolored here. You see there's discoloration inside the connector. So these connectors have to go. I've got to do a bigger wire. The fuses, like I said, did their job. So we did not suffer the fate that we did over here with the 30 amp. We have a 20 amp and they're blown. That's good. That's what I wanted. Because when this type of thing happens, I want that to blow so that other things don't melt. So I did good there, but not good there. So I just have to fix this up and do better. And then over here at the valve adjustment, I want to show you what exactly happened. You see, I've already got the valve cover off. I've got the spark plugs out. And that's because I want to be able to hand turn it as easily as possible. And I'm going to show you just a quick clip of something that I took before because I don't want to take this off of position 1. This is at top dead center right now. Roll it. Okay, so as you can see, there is a really awful tapping noise as we roll over in the compression cycle. And that is likely caused by really horrible valve lash. And yeah, okay, that's typical for really horrible valve lash. Now, why is the horrible valve lash so horrible? Well, I have a theory that comes down to this feeler gauge set that I used last time. So if we look at the hood of our other car, we are supposed to have exhaust valve lash of 0.18 plus or minus 2 cold. So let's go to our 0.18 feeler, or at least as close as we have to it. We've got 0.15. That's the closest we got. So we should have a go on a 0.15 and a no-go on 2.0. So let's check this out. So this is at top dead center already. We have a go on 1.5 and we have a no-go on 0.020. All right? So let's take a look at the feeler gauges that I bought from AutoZone 15 years ago. The closest we have is 0.178 and 0.203. So 0.178, same valve as a go. 0.203, which is slightly bigger than 0.20, mind you. That's a go. This is supposed to be bigger than this. and this doesn't go in. So that tells me that my tool failed me. And given that this is a product of the People's Republic of China, I think we all know where this belongs. So clearly the tool that I used failed me here, and I'm going to go back to the tool that I've been using for a very long time. This is the SAE metric combo. I don't like using SAE metric combos, but if this is going to be more accurate than the Chinese piece of crap that I just threw in the trash where it belongs, then we're going to go with this, all right? So what we're going to do is, since this is 0.018 plus or minus 2, we want just a slight drag on this because this is a little bit tight. And we definitely don't want this in. It's even the 203 is still technically kind of sort of within tolerance. We want to bring it in just a little bit tight. First thing we need to do is line this thing up. And it is just about lined up. That's top dead center. So I've got a 12mm ratcheting with the little switch to go back and forth to make my life slightly easier. So what are we going to do here? We got to tighten this. So we're going to pop that off. We're going to slip the feeler gauge in at 0.017. Just slip it in. And then we're going to put that on there, set it to tighten so that we can turn the flathead top until we get some drag on this. So you see I'm starting to have to kind of force it in. That means I'm getting really close to where I want to be. Let's go over to the 20. And the 20 does not go in. And neither does the 718. Okay, so I want to be right about here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to tighten this. Technically, I'm there, but it's still kind of hot dog in a hallway, you know? I want at least a little drag. So this set does not have the 010 required to do the intake valves. We're going to have to circle back to this. We're going to go ahead and do the exhaust valves right now, get them all within tolerance, and see if we can get this noise to go away when we're turning it by hand. So next up, we need to do cylinder 3, and so that happens by pointing the up arrows towards the front of the engine. Not towards the front of the car, the engine, because the engine is tilted back 15 degrees. So everything is at 75 degrees instead of at 90 degrees. So up and up are both pointed sideways, and our side hash marks are pointed upwards. So we want to be sure about that. So we're going to do something a little bit dangerous looking, but it's totally fine. We've got a socket at the very top of our cylinder in cylinder 3, and we want it to be right at the tippy top, which I think is going to be right there. So we're going to go ahead and adjust this valve. It's going to be the same thing, just over here. So let's turn this thing and see if the exhaust valves still make that awful noise or if it's quiet down a little bit. Yeah, it still makes a horrible noise. So I think I've just won myself Schrodinger's lottery, because I am both very unlucky and at the same time very, very lucky. So I've turned the crankshaft, I have adjusted all of the valve lash using better feeler gauges than what I used previously. I knew my tool was bad from that little experiment. Now, the next thing that I did after that was I turned it again and I was still getting a pop. So I posted up the video of my experience so far on 3rd Gen Prelude enthusiast Facebook group so I could try to bounce some ideas off people. And so as I was turning, someone someone said it looked like the camshaft was moving as you were turning it. And another person said, check the timing belt tensioner. And so I did that. I took this cover off down here, which is down there, and I adjusted the timing belt tensioner. That's easy enough. I started to think if the camshaft looks like it's moving when the rocker arms make the pop, then I should be able to feel where it's happening, when it's happening, and on what camshaft it's happening. So I can kind of get an observation of where in the combustion cycle this is taking place. So I started putting my hand on things, rotating the engine again, and that's when I noticed the cam gear shaking. Cam gear is not supposed to shake. So this bolt had backed itself out. So let's just take a look at this. You see how easy that is to move? Well, now let's tighten this. Now that I've tightened the camshaft, let's start rotating. No pops. Problem solved. So next, obviously I want to get some Loctite on these bolts. I do not want to close this up without getting some Loctite on here. I believe I torqued this to spec, which is kind of a problem. I didn't want to over tighten them, so I torqued them to spec, but torquing them to spec, it still backed out. So either my torque wrench is no good, or I should have also used Loctite, and I think I know the answer to that. What I don't know the answer to is, what's going to happen when I take this bolt out? Is the camshaft going to pop off, or will the woodruff key be enough to keep it on? I hope so. Let's just hope, because I need to put Loctite on this. And if the camshaft falls off, then I'm going to have to reset timing. It's not that big of a deal. It is a huge time sink if that happens, but it's not going to cost me a bunch of money. And money is something that I don't have to spare right now. And then once that's done, we still have to solve the fan problem. So like I said, I've got a lot of work ahead of me, but at the same time, I'm very, very lucky. Because if that cam bolt had fallen off, and if that cam gear had fallen off, I would have to replace pretty much half this motor, if not the entire motor, because, you know, it not only would have bent all the valves, but it would have torn up pretty much everything on this side of the motor. So I am really, really considering myself lucky here, even though I'm quite unlucky. So while we're at it, I want to give a special thanks to everyone that helped me out in the 3rd Gen Prelude Enthusiast Facebook group. You guys actually chimed in real quick and led me to this answer really, really fast. So I want to thank first Ryan D, who was the first to respond. I want to thank Royce J. He said retention of the timing belt, but and that's also what my friend Ed Bob Nova had to say as well. I did that, and that was a worthy effort. I also want to thank Richard. It was his comment that actually led me to me putting my hands on things to try to feel where the shifting around was happening. So his comment actually led me to the answer. I also want to thank Remington. And while I found the answer right before he commented, he actually guessed it exactly correctly. His answer, had he posted 3 minutes earlier, would have led me directly to the solution of this problem. So really huge shout out to Remington. Thank you very much. So in order to get these bolts off and get some Loctite on here, I think I have to remove this cover because the cover comes up to just about the top of the bolt. I'm not going to get this thing out with this cover in. So that's going to mean taking off this motor mount, which is a pain in the ass because it is an aftermarket and it doesn't like to fit all that well. But we got to do it. Got to do what you got to do. So we're going to have to get the jack under the motor and then take off these bolts, and the jack will support the motor. I'm going to use my motorcycle jack because it'll just kind of cradle it a little bit better. And then take these bolts off, that one, that one, that one, and then that one and that one in there. I might have to take this out so I can take this outer bracket out. It turns out you can remove the bolt for the cam gear without having to drop the timing belt. So that's very fortunate. You just have to make sure not to disturb this thing too much. So that means I don't want to delay any further. I don't want to risk bumping that. So I'm going to get some Loctite on this and thread this bolt back in. And by the way, I'm using a Loctite Blue, which, by the way, comes in a red container. I don't know why. Loctite blue comes in a red container, and Loctite red comes in a blue container. Clearly, the designers over at Loctite are geniuses. Okay, well, I got everything back together, and in theory, we're ready to start this again. Am I nervous? Yes, very. I'm not going to have any fans because that's a problem I'm going to fix later. Oh, but listen to that go. Everyone that says that ticking is normal, do you hear it ticking? A little bit. That's within the realm of what I'd consider normal, though. Oh, it sounds great. All right, so clearly I have solved my little problem with the wiggling cam gear. That is such a huge, huge relief. Next, I have to fix this fan problem because obviously we're not going anywhere without cooling fans. Won't go very far anyway. This is going to be mostly off camera because it's just going to be pulling out wires, replacing wires, and putting things back. So we don't have a whole lot of daylight left, but I am going to use every second I have available because I got the last of the parts I needed to finish my Prelude. And so I've got a bunch of 40 amp relays. These are waterproof relays, and they come kind of pre-wired like this, and you just splice into it. And now that I have the connectors to do that, this is going to be really easy. I also need inline fuses. So you don't want to just run a relay without a fuse. And it turns out I actually have one of these sitting on my bench, but I needed two. So get that out of the way. This is just a total freaking mess here in my garage, but that's what happens sometimes, especially when you have 4 car projects at the same time. And here are the inline fuse holders. So I don't think they come with fuses, but I have fuses. I'm not worried about that. Let's see what gauge wire they are. They should be 12 gauge, and they are. So, really simple. Battery power goes into this, and then out to the blue wire to the fans. This yellow one I don't need, so I'm just going to clip it off. Black is the relay ground, white is the signal. And so the reason why we're going to replace this box, even though I really do like it, is because it's not handling the 12 gauge wire very well. It's just too thick. Everything's too stiff. It's too hard to work with, and I can't even get these connectors in the slots. So screw it. This is much more compact anyway. It's going to fit the space a little bit nicer. I'll have a little more room to work with. But I can use this in my TR7 project because I do plan on running custom fuses and relays in the TR7. I'm going to do custom everything in the TR7. So basically all I need to do here is just cut these wires and splice them into these 2 relays that I have here. So we're just going to get started with that. I'll check in with you when I have something to show. Well, this is all done. The power wires I ran underneath my main power connection and got new fuses in here. The relays are tucked in over here. They're zip tied in because I haven't fabricated a bracket or figured out if I even want them there. This is an evolution. I mean, of course, I still have to deal with some corrosion on the battery tray. I'm going to deal with that later. This is kind of like an iteration. So the fan connections are down here. Everything is 12 gauge all the way up to the fuse box. The fuses are 20 amp. So one of the reasons why I wired it the way I did previously with smaller gauge wire is on the documentation for the fans, it said they were 15 amps. So I thought, well, 15 amps, that's not that bad. A 14 gauge wire should be just fine, even though coming out of the fans, they were 12 gauge. I was wrong, and I found some comments on the Summit Racing reviews of these fans saying you needed 12 gauge all the way out, and some people are even running 30 amp fuses. I'm still going to run 20 amp for now. If they blow without any kind of melting, then I'll upgrade to 30 amp. So also, this is my old fuse box cover. I got a new one from Mike at the channel, Oh Yeah, About That. I also had one on the shelf. I didn't realize it, but I found it after he gave it to me. So, just to be sure, I ruined both of them. Now they're both ruined. No, actually, I started copying my original cut over here onto that one, and then I realized I can do a little bit better by moving some things around, bending this terminal connector, and now I got both of the hot wires away from the negative. And that was a thing that I didn't like when I was running the hot wire over here, is that it was directly above the ground, and that just didn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy. I may still have a little bit more adjustment left to do here. I may have to trim off just a little bit, but it seems to be fitting pretty well. So yeah, now I have a new fuse box cover with a nice plastic and a nice clean sticker that isn't peeling off. So that's cool. Great. Thank you again, Mike. And lastly, I mentioned that I'm going to put an oil catch can on this car. I'm going to do that later. I'm not doing that now. I've got more important projects in line. I will do it at some point, and it looks like I've got a really great spot to put it, right there by that ground. So yeah, let's reconnect the main fuse to the front of the car and turn the car on and see if these fans start up. They're both on. Awesome. What a relief. I fixed the cams without having to completely rebuild the motor. That was scary. And I fixed the fans, which allowed me to hear that horrible noise in the first place. So last thing we got to do is, well, we got a little bit to clean up. Kind of a mess over here. So I'm going to clean up. Put the car on the ground, tighten the lug nuts. That's why the torque wrench is up there, to remind me to torque these down once I get the car on the ground. And then we're going to go for a drive. Oh, all right. First time out since the big debacle a few weeks ago with my camshaft almost falling off. And you know, like I said, I'm really grateful that my fans died at that point, because I probably wouldn't have even heard the valves tapping so badly had it not been for those fans dying. So a good next step to this would probably be installing a fan kill switch, because I do have the wiring running up to the front of the car. It's actually the stock wiring that I'm using as a trigger for this thing, and it's not a huge wire, so I think it's entirely possible that I could run it into the cabin onto the switch, or I just leave a switch underneath the hood. It's not that big of a deal. It's more for diagnostic than anything else, because this car doesn't have a problem heating up or staying at temperature. It's just I put the two giant fans in there for really, really hot days, and I want that extra security when it's really hot. And then under the hood, we've got a few opportunities to improve. For example, doing some bracketing for the intake system, and you know, bolting those relays in instead of zip tying them. Those are all opportunities that I can take as they come, as I have time, as I get back under the hood of this car, you know, now and then. We also freed up some space underneath the hood on that battery tray, so I can use that tray for some other things. I kept it there because, for one, it has some mounting points for some of the other harnesses. But I also kept it there because it acts as kind of like a splash guard. It helps protect the air filter a little bit more, and I can easily drill holes into it, mount other things to it. Like if I make a bracket for the intake, I would probably start it off of the battery tray. So there's just a whole lot of reasons why you want to keep something like that instead of removing it and going for that clean look. I mean, I could remove it, but at the end of the day, it would be temporary. I know I'm going to end up putting it back in later on. And also throughout this process, I learned a few things. The most important lesson is to use Loctite on your cam gear bolts. I mean, I don't think it had it there before, but it has it now. And hopefully it holds up. Hopefully the crank pulley bolt holds on, but I used an impact on that, so that's going to be fine. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Totally unplanned work, but that's how it goes sometimes. And you have to go with the flow when something like that happens. When your primary car goes down, all of your optional projects are on hold. So I couldn't work on the Camaro, I couldn't work on the other Prelude, I couldn't work on anything else, I couldn't even work on my house. And in fact, it kind of disrupted my work day a little bit because, God, it was just having all of that on your mind will take you away from whatever you're supposed to do. So I'm just glad I handled it. I'm glad I solved the mystery early on, so I wasn't like tragically worried about it. It was just more of a matter of handling it, and I did, and it's done now. And thankfully, we've got the Prelude and the Miata back on the road. I will not dare call them reliable. Won't. I'm never going to do that again. Funny thing, I call the Miata reliable, it breaks. I call the Prelude reliable, it breaks. But then I call the Jeep a broken ass pile of shit with a cracked head, and guess what? I'm not even going to say it, because if I do, we all know what's going to happen by now. So that's it for this video. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, comment. If you don't like what you see, maybe you're an electrical engineer, maybe you're a Prelude purist, leave a comment anyway. I want to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.